Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the first round of this year's Taiwan Schools Debate Challenge. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm from the Ad Score. I'll be your chair for this round. Pronouns he, him. Before we start, couple of reminders. Firstly, please don't forget to time yourselves. I'm also going to time. If you can time, it's okay. I'm just going to raise. The first minute I'm going to clap, and if it's the 5th minute I'm going to clap again, and 6th minute I'm going to clap. And then secondly, I highly encourage debaters to raise and accept questions with the debate engaging. Let's start. Let's talk about the first speaker from the proposition side to start the debate, please. You're here.
My time starts at 3. Hello, I am the government speaker 1, and I'll be debating on this House briefs that only one host city for all succeeding Olympics instead of electing different host cities for each Olympics. So basically, our model is that all the countries that are participating in the Olympics right now will elect a new country, right? And this new country will be used as the host city for as long as no circumstances change. The host city can be re-elected if certain circumstances change. These circumstances can be anything. It could range from natural disasters such as earthquake destroying the infrastructure or tsunamis, or it could also be something around the lines of like that the government, they elect a new government and it's like a regime and they just don't comply to certain rules. So we have a bunch of arguments on why our model is better than the status quo. So first of all, that's a big one, is that we don't need to keep rebuilding the infrastructure. Once it's built, it stays there, and it has a lot of benefits with it. Now, one thing I want to point out is that the only profitable Olympic until now was the Olympic in 1969 in LA. And the reason why this Olympic was actually profitable was because the infrastructure was already built. Meaning that almost every Olympic until now was in a loss. Meaning the countries that had to build the Olympics were losing money. Now, for example, let's say that the country that the Olympic is hosted this year would be a more poor country and economically insufficient. This would mean that they will be crippled in debt, and basically it would just not be good for the locals that live in that country. Now, another bad thing about these rotating Olympics will be that sometimes a country gets elected that doesn't have the best government. An example we can see of that is not the Olympics, but similar. It was the Qatar World Cup. It focuses around the same principles as the Olympic, that a bunch of countries fly in to a place to compete in sports, right? Basically what happened there was that the country migrated workers. They flew out workers from different places, and that they treated these workers very poorly under very poor work conditions, and that was terrible. Now, in our model, instead of migrating workers from outside, we will instead use local workers and maybe have people volunteer for building the infrastructure. And this would benefit our city that we elect in many ways. Now, first of all, there are a bunch of work opportunities. A lot of effort and manpower goes into building an Olympic, whether it be a construction worker or the person handling the finances. This will create a lot of work opportunities and also boost this country's economics. Now, talking about economics, this will also boost the economics in the way that it will be a tourist attraction, right? The Olympics is a very significant tournament, and by having the infrastructure already built, they will profit every year, meaning that this would greatly boost the economics of this country. Now, one argument that I have to say that is not good for the status quo right now is that when Olympics get built in countries, these take a vast amount of natural resources. Where do these natural resources come from? They come from the country that they are built in. Now, if these natural resources get all used up for building the stadiums, the roads, the trams, the locals will not benefit from it because the other areas of this country will be lacking in resources. And that would just not be good. Now, Thank you for listening, and we are proud to propose.
We would like to thank the first speaker from the government side for their speech. We now invite the first speaker from the opposition side to start to speak now. Here.
Hello, I'm the operator, and we are now talking about motion. This house believes that that only be one host city for all the succeeding Olympics instead of 14 different host cities for each Olympics. Okay, so the status quo is Olympics are held every 4 years by different city, and there are only few cities have held Olympics for twice or 3 times. And in our side of the world, the different city would have chance to hold Olympics because Olympics bring economy benefits. Then okay, and I'll do some photos on the government side. And they say that keep rebuilding stadium. It takes natural resources, but because Olympics is held every 4 years, so actually the citizen people who live there can also use the stadium and the things that they build after the match, after the tournament. And they say that actually there's only one on the tournament. It's profiting. But if we have Olympics in some country, you should watch it like not in a short term. You should watch it in a long term, because Olympics can make the country explosion. Like there will be more people knowing this city and this country, so it brings benefit in the long term, not in the short term. And you also mentioned that it greatly boosts economy for one specific country. So now we're saying that seems not to be fair, because if there's only one country getting that economy benefits, then okay, it's not fair. Then move on to the burdens of this round, and it's about which city should be earning this huge amount of money. Like the standard to elect the city and the country. What's that? Move on to our first argument. Olympics bring economy benefits. So if a city held Olympics, then there will attract a huge amount of people to travel to that country, and that brings economy benefits because first it boosts the explosion of that country, and also adding up the like hotel and some entertain stuff, then that can be benefits and earning money for that country, because that attracts tourists, tourists and people who visit there, and that brings economy benefits. And more, if we only held Olympics in one country and not changing it, it worsens the gap between poor country and rich country. If we held Olympics in rich country, that country is only getting richer and richer, and the poor country won't have the chance to hold Olympics, and that is not the principle of Olympics. And also, move on to our second argument. It's about jet lag. If we only held Olympics in one specific country, it might not seem to be fair for all of the sport players, because different time zones. So some of the players might have to wake out really early, and some of the players might can benefit from it because if their country is geographically nearer than other sport players. Yeah. And what's the impact of it? The sport player that is geographically farther than the Olympic hosted country might get too tired so that they cannot perform their best during the match and the game. So it might be too tired and too exhausted for them. And I'm proud of this.
We would like to thank the first speaker from the opposition team for their speech. Let's now call on the second speaker from the government side.
Bubble tea.
Start. Continue this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Oh yeah.
It's perfect.
Yep. Okay. My time starts. What? Oh, glasses. No, it's okay. Okay. My time starts in. What's the microphone? Oh, never mind. 3, 2, 1. Hello, I am the second government speaker. First, I would like to address some arguments that the first opposition speaker has mentioned. First, I believe the main argument she mentioned was that it brings economical benefits. So, the problem she mentioned was that in different countries, what if it only benefits one country and not the others? Well, first of all, we believe still that this profit that will come naturally because the infrastructure was already built could be split among the countries participating. Additionally, we believe that if we stay in one country and keep the infrastructure, then not only will the problems such as environmental problems and others be lessened because of the experience and the enforced law around these things. We also think it is way easier to get more resources for more sports and for more activities, because this will act as a multicultural hub in which many countries will enter and play the sport at the same exact time every 4 years. And I believe that this is good for consistency. Okay. We would also like to address the argument about the large amount of tourists. Yes, this will benefit one country specifically economically. However, tourists also cause problems. Tourists, for example, they will perhaps litter on the streets or cause other environmental impacts, such as maybe not being aware of a certain species being endangered, or yes.
And how is it better when these littering and all the bad things tourists do only happen to one country? How is that fair?
That's fair, because in this country specifically, we can lessen it. We can make sure it is very well enforced in this country. We can make sure it is not such a big problem in this country as in other countries. That means we're prepared for this problem. This country is prepared for this problem, which means that if you're going to another country, this will be more of a problem than if you stay in this one. So that's why I believe that the tourism thing shouldn't be kind of as an argument. Additionally, we would like to address the other main argument on the opposition side, which is the one about the jet lag. The jet lag you mentioned may benefit some other athletes more than others. However, this is true for every single area. And while it is true that every single 4 years, it is true that the athletes still have to go to the same place and the same athletes are slightly at a disadvantage, I still believe this is not a big problem. Because, first of all, these athletes can plan for this and come to the country earlier. And this is possible because the countries there have already provisions or other treatments for such conditions. Because the country is experienced in this. The country knows about these problems, and the country can prevent these problems before it has happened because they have it every single time. Also, even if it is true that some athletes are slightly at a slight disadvantage, we still believe that the amount of pros on our side outweighs this. Now, you also mentioned that the country will get more recognition. Yes, this is true to a certain extent. However, we still believe that if you go to this specific country, right, everybody flies to this specific country, this acts like a multicultural hub, there will naturally still be representatives from different countries. And there, obviously, you can know new people, you can obviously meet new people from countries you may have never heard from before. And I believe that is the core principle of the Olympics still stays intact. Now, I would like to offer a few arguments of my own. Right. Give me a second, please. Right. Okay. Some infrastructure could be outdated around the area. However, if the same event is held in the same country, then the infrastructure can stay new because we all know that the Olympics is going to be held here. And this is going to be incredibly convenient for the people who are constructing the infrastructure. And not only does this bring environmental benefits, like I mentioned before, this also costs less resources from the locals. Imagine you are trying to build a stadium for the Olympics, right? You would need resources from the locals, and you're essentially draining away from different cities every 4 years. However, if you build it on one place and have it there every 4 years, we won't need to drain resources from other countries, other places around the world. You don't even need to really use many resources because you already have the infrastructure, you already have the personnel, you already have the staff. Therefore, I believe that it should be a priority to attempt to keep most of the Olympics in one area. Okay, thank you for listening.
We would like to thank the second speaker from the government side for their speech. Let's now call the second speaker from the opposition side.
The speech starts in 3, 2, 1. The value of Olympics is not just the sports value that it provides, the competitive environment that it provides, but more crucially, it's the demonstration of inclusivity and cultural exchange values, which side proposition essentially ignores. Before I start my constructive arguments, I would like to give some rebuttals. First, regarding the issue of the infrastructure. We would like to tell you that when a country is responsible for building these infrastructures, they often get funds from all over the place to help them to make the infrastructure better, since it is an infrastructure provided for the public for all over the world to use together. And this is often good for the locals because poor countries where they do not have the chance to get so state-of-the-art infrastructure and stadiums and facilities use this chance to boost the local economy and make the situation better in the long term for the locals to make use of these infrastructure. And secondly, regarding migration, you said that there will be humanitarian issues such as employing immigrants to build these things. When we say that this is a completely different issue, as humanitarian issues and bias towards immigrants should be dealt with separately, and we already have communities, organizations like the UN dealing specifically with these problems, and these problems, we would like to say, can exist on both sides, yet there are already mechanisms dealing with this that we do not have to worry about. And fourthly, that you say that country can't be prepared for tourists. I don't really understand how. Like, are you going to build more toilets or whatever? You cannot essentially go against all the chaos that tourism is going to bring you. And it's not fair that you put this burden only on one country. If you cannot give me a constructive way of how you are going to deal with this, I don't take this argument at all. And fifthly, the adaptation. We'd like to say that it is not only the jet lag that affects the athletes, that also affects their performances, and in the long term create differences, unfair differences in performances of athletes from different countries, because there are also cultural adaptations. For example, if I'm going to fly to Japan, I have similar food that I can enjoy, but if I'm flying to Africa, the environment is totally different, and adaptation is also mentally and culturally. It's not only just a jet lag that you're talking about. We can fly early or whatever. My first speaker has already demonstrated some practical impacts on our side, and now I'm going to move on to the principles part of our arguments. Firstly is inclusivity. A fact check is that the logo of the Olympics, the five circles, essentially demonstrates 5 continents, and that demonstrates their value and how they really value inclusivity and basically just cultural equality. Firstly, this is a very great chance for different countries to demonstrate their own culture and views of cultural exchange. There are 2 points to this. Firstly, they always get chances to show the most special side. For example, in Tokyo, they showed how they have anime, how they have many very cool Japanese traditional cultures. That if these are always held in the same countries, other countries won't get as much and as fair as a chance to demonstrate these. The impact of it is decrease a variety of cultures and cultural exchange. And also we believe that on our side we facilitate world peace by giving countries more understanding towards each other, as they'll see that other countries have this and we have this and we can sort of exchange. And that does not happen, but only one city is hosting it. Don't tell me that there are going to be multicultural hubs because it's essentially different. Moving on to my second part of this inclusivity argument is that there is the importance of different cultural groups between different countries. The premise of this, there are 2 premises of this. Firstly, hosting city sets the tone of the tournament every year, as the people will be living in the place and they will be deciding many things. It's actually very difficult for them to go against this and build a 100% equal place for everyone to exchange. That's just difficult and impossible because of the second premise that there is no one-size-fits-all beliefs for everyone. In some countries, they will have bias, like natural bias against some countries that you can just not go against. And there is no 100% perfect cultural belief or environment that's the same. That's equal for everyone. This is why we say that we change the whole city every year to give everyone a fair chance of showing the best side of themselves. We'd like to know that Olympics has come a long way in improving racism and generally including women and different genders into the tournament. And this is only kept fair and kept equal because of the balance of power. Because different countries get to host different years. So this is why if this year someone does something for example, not good for the black race people, and in the next year they will adjust. And when one country holds the tournament, we have to tell you that hosting city again sets the tone of the tournament. And if the one city has the main control of the tournament, they are dominant, then it's very hard for us to keep these equality beliefs in check. And secondly, this worsens the gap between second section of my argument that this worsens the gap between the rich and poor. My whip will address more on that. Firstly, is you didn't give me a constructive idea of how the city is going to be elected in the first place. And since you didn't provide that, we are going to provide that for you. For example, there's going to be votes, but votes are intrinsically more likely to be given to more powerful countries because they have lobbying power and also they have more money, they have more power to persuade everyone else, and generally have more respect. And therefore, when one country that is very powerful is chosen, in the future it will also be very difficult for the community to take them out of the thing if they do something bad, because essentially they have more power. And in the long term, there is going to be also more exposure and more economic benefits to this country. That's going to be very hard for other countries to push against. Note that the economic benefits we say is in the long term is also visible and invisible ones. Invisible ones include exposure, cultural exposure, and attention to the country, and respect and understanding, like we already said before. And second, there might also be monopoly, as one country already holds all the resources and infrastructure, and they can raise it as high as they want and do whatever they want, because they will only have many harm concentrated to them, and it will be very hard for the community or other countries to do it to them. Very proud to oppose.
We would like to take the second speaker from the office. Hi for the speech. There's an alternate speaker from the government. Thank you.
Opposition speaker for, and I will now show. I'll first rebut 2 points of the government, and then of the opposition. No, I'll first rebut 2 points of the government, then I will talk about the clashing points and how we win them. So first they said that when voting a new city for the Olympics, they would have more lobbying power richer countries would have more lobbying power to get the city, and then they would have more money to host the city, and they would have more benefit. But this is also true for the status quo, where let's just for example, a country where Azerbaijan can't host the city because they don't have any money, right? So they won't get voted as well. Yeah. And furthermore, you said that there would be more resources for richer countries, and that's true. So why should we host the Olympics in a poor country where they would just go more in debt and eventually not be able to go out of the debt, right?
But
Yeah.
would you say that it will worsen the gap between the rich country and poor?
Exactly. And hosting the Olympics in a poor country won't close the gap, because in fact the poorer country would just go more into debt from hosting Olympics, from building all the infrastructure, right? And yeah. So now I'll mention the three main clashing points. Cultural exchange value, tourists wouldn't overrun the city, and jet lag would create unfair advantages to the host city's nation. So first, cultural exchange value. I find we believe that this argument doesn't make any sense, because if a host nation always hosts the Olympics, right? People all over the world will still go to that country, and just because it gets hosted in the same city every year doesn't mean that the host city will take all the attention, right? They can still promote other nations during the Olympics. Furthermore, you say that tourists wouldn't overrun the city. We believe that to also be false, because in newer cities, in a city where the Olympics haven't been hosted before, the tourists would just, the city wouldn't necessarily be accommodated for all the new influx of tourists, for their housing, transportation. Don't forget, there's still people working who have to get to work, and if the transportation gets overloaded by tourists, then how will normal people get to work? And now, for last, yes?
No matter where the Olympics is hosted, there will be tourists flying in everywhere.
Yes, exactly. But if we host it in the same city every year, that city can already have expanded the public transportation, right? And they can already have housing like hotels and all the housing built for the athletes. And now for the last clash that I'll mention was the jet lag, and how that would create advantages for athletes. The truth is that even in every Olympics, right, in a different city, that nation will always have an advantage with jet lag. And which is why the second speaker said the athletes can just come in advance to get used to the jet lag, right? And also, you said that the host nation will have the judges will be biased, and there will be bias towards the host nation. And this, we believe, to also not really make sense, because this has nothing to do with how it's hosted. And in every city, there might be bias, right? So,
Point.
yeah.
You said that every city is all be biased, and that exactly supports our point, because we told you that by changing cities every year, then every time that you get to have like more chances for different countries and not just power in one country.
More for bias.
Like you said that there will be hosting, like there will be bias and cultural bias and like prejudice and stuff.
Exactly. And if we host the Olympics in the same city every year, we can adapt to the bias. We can, the host city can hire foreign referees, and if a host city is used to having tourists and a racial mix, then the city can be adapted, can get used to it, reducing the bias in the whole city. So, for these reasons, we resoundingly believe that hosting the city in the same nation every year would be the most beneficial way. Thank you.
Let me take third speaker from the government side. That's not our third speaker.
My time will start in First of all, I would like to remind everyone here of what the debate goal of today's motion is. Our debate goal of this side of the motion is equality around the world and respect between countries. This matters because this is the Olympics that we're talking about. The Olympic flag represents the 5 continents because, well, we already talked about this, but I would like to mention it again because it matters, the equality matters in this motion. First of all, I would like to reply to some of the things that you said on government side and also your opposition. So yeah, you said that the chosen country's government might not be good in your first speaker, I suppose, but isn't it also possible for the chosen country to have a bad government? And because once that happens, that would be a long-term effect because in your situation, in your situation, you'll have that kind of government forever because you won't have another government in your side of the house. And economic benefits will be created in that country, but it's like one specific place forever. That means it will create a vicious cycle. The economic gap will be bigger because only that specific country will get like much more money, and all kinds of other countries they're staying there. They don't have the Olympics and they don't get money, which means the gap will get bigger. And so for our arguments, first of all, we have a good chance. This is a really good opportunity to show each country's their culture and their traditions, and that the impact will be really big because it can create a world peace by understanding each other by using this great opportunity of like the introduction of this country during the beginning of the Olympics. And also, second, economic benefits. On our side of the house, we have more countries that will get this kind of advantage because people, while they go to this country to watch the Olympics, they will also spend lots of money on hotel, entertain, traveling, and all kinds of stuff instead of just that specific country. And plus, how all those things that the government side has got. Most importantly, however, government has all these wonderful sounding advantages, although we did reply to some of them, but they did not mention how they choose the country. They did not mention the policy at the first place. And making all your informations broad are realistic, and we don't really understand. Yeah, making all those informations are realistic. And again, yes?
So you said how, first of all, you said before that for the government, what if the government is like not good? It will take a long time until it gets like the government will stay for a long time, right? But we stated specifically in our model that if there is a case of that the government is like insufficient, that would mean that they would re-elect it. We did say that.
Okay, so even if you say that the government will be re-elected, then like cities. Okay, even the city's government or the leader will be re-elected, but
We mean
no, you understand. Okay, but it's also possible for on our side of the house. Not like every country has a bad government. It's also one of the other benefits of on our side of the house is also that we switch places each 4 years, and so there is a less possibility of having a bad government. There will be a less possibility of having a bad government anyways. And we would like to mention that we have more and bigger scope impacts because our economic advantages benefits bigger magnitude, and we benefit much more countries, much more places, and most importantly, we can also create world peace by this opportunity of the Olympics, a good chance to show each country's culture and traditions and all those kind of stuff. And you cannot forget that the Olympics basically just stands for, the Olympic flags just basically stand for equality. So the debate goal is about equality around the world and respect between each countries. So in conclusion, we should switch countries and places and countries for host of the Olympics because of a few reasons. First of all, it's a good chance to show each country's culture and tradition. Second, it will bring economic benefits, and it will, when I say economic benefits, I don't mean by the, it will decrease the gap between each other and decrease the chance of monopoly as well. And people will spend money on hotel, entertainment, and traveling, and that's in that country, which is not a specific country. And also, how do you adapt bias? I mean, bias is bad, so why is it good to adapt bias?
Do you like?
No. So, thank you, and I'm calling to a vote.
Thank you, third speaker from the third opposition speaker. Let's not call it opposition.
My speech starts in 3, 2, 1. In my speech, I'm going to walk through what happened on the debate, and I'm going to also present comparisons between our side of the world and their side of the world. Firstly, our first and second speaker addressed the practical arguments on our side. Firstly, regarding economic benefits, I believe the clash in this debate is essentially money saved by repeatedly having one city hold the tournaments versus chance for all the countries to participate and benefit economically. First, that is, the other side is essentially ignoring the exposure and attention and tourism that is brought to the country when they get to host the events. They are only talking about the visible costs, such as stadiums and facilities that are built, which we would like to say is actually not such a big effect, as they get international funds from the community and from all over the place to build these stadiums. And also, you keep on saying that it is actually good to have all the infrastructure in one place, and we will tell you that it is not true, because actually a lot of cities get the chance to have rapid development throughout these fundings and to have these facilities implemented in their local places, and to have chances for their athletes also participating in these kind of activities. And therefore, we say that we apparently went on this clash, as we only told you how chance for each other countries aligns with the essential value of Olympics, which is inclusivity and equality. And secondly, I believe the turning point on this debate is how you completely ignored our point on inclusivity and gave zero response. Firstly, we would like to say again that the hosting city sets the tone of the tournament a lot. It's not some sort of online meeting that you have people all over the place joining. It's also how you get to taste the food there, you get to go into the environment and really experience the culture, which will not happen at all on their side of the house. And also, secondly, we also told you how this really worsens the gap between the rich and powerful countries and the less rich and more poor countries without much power. Because firstly, you did not give us a clear mechanism as to how you chose the country in the first place, and so you have to go with our definition, which was that they are going to use their excessive powers and lobbying power in order to get the most advantage out of their side. And even worse, once they start being the only country hosting the tournaments, the committee and all the other countries essentially have no power to go against them for two reasons. Firstly, they already invested a huge amount of money such as infrastructure into it, and therefore it will be very difficult for them economically to fight back. And also, secondly, politically, they already have all the power since they have been hosting tournaments every year, and they can decide the whole of the tournament. Therefore, if there are like equity issues like racism and gender equality, it's going to be very difficult for us to fix, and for the people all over the world to address, because as we told you, the Olympics has come a long way in resolving issues such as racism and gender equality, which is only kept in check because of the balance of power, which is shared across the whole world. And at the end of our speech, I'm going to give you a comparison of the differences between our side of the world and their side of the world. In our side of the world, we remain the status quo and have the Olympics become the strongest, the most the inclusive place, and whereas on the other side of the world, we essentially ignore them. Very proud of that. Thank you.
reply. That's not all of them.
Do I get a timer? No? Okay. Okay, my time starts in 3, 2, 1. So, we would like to quickly address a few things first. We mentioned, bias. Bias can be improved by adjusting the judges. That is how it can be improved. We would just like to quickly mention that. We said that in our second speech, and we would like to repeat this. Bias can be improved by the judges. It doesn't have anything to do with switching around countries, because this country will be hosting the Olympics every single time, which means that this place can be adapted. This place judges can be changed. And also, additionally, we also mentioned that the government, with extreme circumstances such as abuse of power, which we mentioned at the first speaker, second speaker, and also third speaker, that government can be changed. It can be changed in the event of extreme abuse of power or extreme circumstances. Okay, first I would like, as the last speaker, I would like to quickly summarize the situation for the judges. First of all, the arguments mentioned by the opposition are the following. They said that that for example, it creates economical benefits only specific for one country, which we rebutted on the second speaker. We also said that it brings an overwhelming amount of tourists, which we said, it doesn't bring a tourist, which we rebutted already by the third speaker. And additionally, you also mentioned the unfair disadvantage on jet lag, which we've also said that there are simple solutions to it. And also, I would like to now state the arguments that have not really been addressed by you. First, you have not addressed the fact that we believe that the infrastructure will be much easier to use if they are improved thoroughly through multiple years of experience. You have never addressed that at all. You have not even spoken about it. Additionally, we would like to address the issue about gender equality and race, because we do not really see how gender equality plays into this at all. This does not make any sense at all. And additionally, we have mentioned that it creates work opportunities and reduces the risk of exploitation of people in the country, because everybody's eyes will be on this one country. Also, international funds international funds can be given to countries that are switched every 4 years, but it can also be given to the one that is hosting the country every year. In fact, more funds will be given to the country that hosts it every year, which means that your argument is completely invalid and is nonsensical. Therefore, I would like to summarize. The opposition prioritizes a slight advantage in equality over extreme environmental degradation, exploitation of human rights with migrant workers and others, and also they have not at all addressed some of our arguments. Therefore, I believe, after weighing our pros and cons carefully against each other and clearly seeing that most of your arguments don't make any sense, I would like to thank you for listening.
We would like to thank Proposition Reply. That ends the debate. We may now cross the house.
Huh? What is that? I'll shake hands.
Yeah. It's still a team, right? Yeah, cross the house, and then you can just go outside and then just wait. Really cool. Thank you.
No.